What happens when your biggest fan suddenly becomes your fiercest critic? It's a question that seems almost unthinkable, especially when the fan in question has publicly declared unwavering support, defended you in the media, and even gone out of her way to elevate your image. And yet, here we are. Stassi Schroeder, the reality TV star known for her roller coaster journey on Vanderpump Rules, has just turned on Meghan Markle, and the reasons she gives are explosive, personal, and utterly fascinating. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. Imagine dedicating years to supporting someone, promoting their work, amplifying their every public appearance, only to be left out of what feels like a simple, almost trivial gesture, a PR box. That's what happened to Stassi. The former reality star claims she was snubbed during Meghan Markle's recent, as ever, PR gifting campaign. A campaign that made headlines, reached fans around the world, and included various influencers and personalities, including some who had openly questioned Meghan in the past. For Stassi, this wasn't just a PR oversight. It was a betrayal that cut deep, personally and publicly. I have literally defended her when no one else did, Stassi admitted on her podcast earlier this month. Think about that for a moment. She didn't just like Meghan Markle. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. Comment positively on her Instagram posts. She was a vocal, consistent advocate, someone who took the time to create content in Meghan's honor, to engage with PR representatives, and to publicly promote Meghan's work across multiple platforms. She put herself on the line in the court of public opinion, defending Meghan when criticism was heavy, when the press was relentless. And yet, all that support, all that loyalty, seems to have been met with silence. It's easy to underestimate the emotional stakes in celebrity relationships, especially when it comes to fans. But in this case, the dynamics are striking. Stassi's story isn't just about being left out of a PR campaign. It's about admiration turned into frustration, devotion turning into anger, and the public exposure of what many might consider a private, emotional heartbreak. I have filmed videos about it. I've commented on all the things. I literally had my King PR reach out, Stassi said, her words raw with indignation and hurt. She's not mincing words. She's making a declaration, one that demands attention. The anger isn't only about the boxes. It's about perception. The way she moves through social media, I think that she's stuck in 2017, and she just thinks I'm a lowly reality person, Stassi stated. Here we see the first hint of what may have been festering for some time. The feeling of being undervalued, dismissed, or even disrespected by someone she admired. There's a tension here that resonates beyond celebrity gossip. The universal human experience of giving your support and not feeling seen in return. It's a story about loyalty, about expectation, and about the shock of feeling replaced or overlooked. The culmination of Stassi's frustration is dramatic, even cinematic. I am furious, and this is the last straw. I'm not watching her show anymore, she declared, referring to Meghan's Netflix series, With Love, Meghan. Imagine that moment. A devoted fan who has publicly defended and promoted Meghan Markle for years now announces that she's done. She's stepping away, withdrawing her support, and, most importantly, making it known to the world. It's a dramatic reversal, and one that immediately draws attention, not just from fans of Meghan, but from anyone interested in the complex dance between celebrity, fandom, and loyalty. But the story doesn't stop there. Stassi also called out Meghan for sending PR boxes to people who, in Stassi's view, have questioned her, specifically Claudia and Jackie Oshry, the hosts of the Toast podcast. When you're sending PR boxes to people who talk tea about you, Claudia and Jackie don't talk tea about her, but they've questioned her, and they also say, I wonder what Stassi's thinking about this. Consider the sting of that. Stassi's devotion is acknowledged, but in a way that feels secondary, almost performative. There's recognition, but not the validation she craved. In her words, everyone King knows. No longer. She has decided to remove herself from that dynamic, to no longer be the unquestioning fan. It's here that we start to see the transformation from loyal supporter to what Stassi calls a toxic hater. She admits, with a kind of self-aware sting, my feelings are hurt, and I'm a toxic fan. I was a toxic fan that's now a toxic hater. There's a psychological and emotional weight here that's fascinating to unpack. Many fans project their admiration onto celebrities, often creating an unbalanced relationship where the fan invests far more emotionally than the object of their admiration. When those expectations aren't met, whether through perceived snubs, dismissals, or a simple lack of acknowledgement, the fallout can be intense, public, and unforgettable. Stassi's critique of Meghan doesn't stop at social media behavior or PR missteps. She goes deeper, alleging that Meghan is intentionally controlling, prioritizing attention toward her critics rather than her most loyal supporters. "I think it's her way of trying to control the narrative. I think she's controlling," Stassi claimed. It's a statement loaded with emotion and accusation, suggesting that what might appear as a simple PR choice is, in Stassi's eyes, part of a deliberate strategy to shape public perception while sidelining those who truly care. The intensity of Stassi's feelings is heightened by the comparison she makes between Meghan and another celebrity, Blake Lively. While she doesn't elaborate fully on the comparison, the mention itself is provocative, suggesting a pattern of behavior or attitude that she finds troubling. It's a hint of drama, of rivalry, and of personal judgment, all elements that keep the audience engaged, eager to understand the deeper motivations behind her outburst. By the end of her podcast episode, Stassi has set the stage for a story that's equal parts personal heartbreak, celebrity critique, and cultural commentary. She has outlined her grievances, expressed her fury, and hinted at a world behind the carefully curated images of Meghan Markle. A world of PR calculations, selective attention, and unacknowledged loyalty. For viewers and fans, it's irresistible. Who wouldn't want to hear more about the fallout of this explosive fan-to-star conflict? And yet, for all the drama, there's still a tension, a question that hangs in the air. What happens next? Stassi has made her position clear, but Meghan's response, or lack thereof, could redefine the narrative entirely. Could this be a turning point in how fans perceive Meghan Markle? Will the public side with Stassi, empathize with her, or see her outburst as overblown? These are questions that demand answers, and they set up the next chapter of this story, the deep dive into Stassi Schroeder's rise, her devotion, and the events that led to this explosive confrontation. In just a few moments, we'll explore Stassi's journey from reality TV star to Meghan Markle advocate. We'll look at the videos she made, the social media campaign she launched, and the personal investment she put into defending someone she believed in. We'll analyze the PR snub, the online drama, and the psychological weight of fan devotion turned to disillusionment. And we'll examine the emotional spikes, the contradictions, and the moments of betrayal that make this story not just a tabloid headline, but a fascinating study in loyalty, celebrity culture, and human emotion. What drives someone to become someone else's #1 fan? How does admiration evolve into almost a personal mission, a crusade to protect and elevate a celebrity in the court of public opinion? To understand the intensity behind Stassi Schroeder's recent fallout with Meghan Markle, we first have to look at who Stassi is, not just as a reality star, but as a cultural figure, a media strategist, and a personality who understands influence and attention like few others. Stassi Schroeder's rise to fame was anything but accidental. She entered the world of reality TV on Vanderpump Rules, a show known for its high-stakes interpersonal drama, sharp personalities, and a cast that thrived on conflict as much as camaraderie. In that environment, Stassi learned early on the mechanics of public perception, the power of a well-timed remark, the impact of social media engagement, and the importance of building a personal brand that audiences would follow, admire, and, crucially, defend. By the time Meghan Markle became a global figure, first as an actress, then as a duchess, and later as a Netflix star, Stassi had already cultivated a keen understanding of fandom, loyalty, and influence. She knew what it meant to be invested in a celebrity, to publicly champion them, and to take heat from critics on their behalf. But her devotion to Meghan wasn't casual or performative. It was intense, proactive, and personal. "I have literally defended her when no one else did," Stassi proclaimed on her podcast. And that wasn't hyperbole. She had produced video content praising Meghan's choices, highlighted her achievements on social media, and even reached out to PR representatives to ensure that her support was known. She wasn't just a passive fan. She was an advocate, a promoter, a one-woman PR amplifier. This is where the intensity begins to make sense. For someone like Stassi, fandom isn't just about admiration. It's a performance of loyalty, a visible, tangible commitment that can be measured by engagement, outreach, and consistent support. But it's also worth noting the stakes involved. Being a vocal supporter of Meghan Markle, a figure both beloved and controversial, came with risks. The media scrutiny, the online criticism, the polarized public opinion, all of it required a thick skin and a willingness to engage in battles she didn't start. And yet, Stassi embraced it, believing that loyalty should be recognized and rewarded. She invested not just her time, but her emotional energy, her reputation, and her credibility into defending someone she admired. The complexity of this relationship becomes clearer when we examine the emotional undercurrents. Loyalty in fandom isn't a neutral state. It's a dynamic, often volatile interplay of expectation, hope, and validation. When fans give so much, they naturally expect acknowledgement, not necessarily as a transactional reward, but as recognition that their investment matters. For Stassi, Meghan's exclusion from the PR gifting campaign felt like a denial of that acknowledgement, a public dismissal of years of advocacy. To contextualize the intensity, we have to remember Stassi's own media history. On Vanderpump Rules, she navigated conflicts, alliances, and betrayals, often under the glare of cameras that captured every word, glance, and gesture. This experience shaped her understanding of narrative control. She knew how stories could be spun, how reputations could be managed, and how silence could be louder than words. So when Meghan Markle allegedly overlooked her, it wasn't just about a PR box. It was a perceived undermining in a realm Stassi understood deeply: image, influence, and public perception. And then there's the social media factor. Stassi's entire persona is built on online engagement: Instagram posts, comments, videos, podcasts, and interviews. She understands virality, timing, and the subtle art of shaping opinion. This is critical because Meghan Markle operates in the same sphere, albeit with a vastly different scale and set of stakes. When Stassi observes the selective attention Meghan gives to others, critics, questioners, or influencers, it strikes her as not just strategic, but personal. It's a misalignment of values, a perceived hierarchy where devotion is devalued and skepticism is rewarded. In many ways, this tension exemplifies the modern celebrity-fan relationship, a mix of admiration, expectation, and emotional labor. Stassi's devotion was not a passive love. It was an active, participatory, and publicly visible effort to shape Meghan's narrative. She was a fan who fought in the trenches, engaging with both supporters and detractors on Meghan's behalf. And when that effort was seemingly ignored, the emotional reaction was inevitable: outrage, hurt, and, eventually, disillusionment. Yet, even as we explore this fallout, it's important to see the shades of complexity. Stassi isn't simply angry or bitter. She's reflective, aware of her own transformation from devoted supporter to outspoken critic. She admits, "I was a toxic fan that's now a toxic hater," acknowledging both the intensity of her previous behavior and the rawness of her current emotions. This self-awareness adds layers to the story. It's not a simple tale of betrayal, but a nuanced examination of loyalty, expectation, and the fine line between admiration and obsession. Stassi's perspective also offers insights into celebrity culture more broadly. She critiques Meghan's approach to social media, suggesting that the Duchess is stuck in 2017 and perhaps underestimates the influence of reality TV personalities and other social media figures. This comment reveals an underlying tension between traditional celebrity hierarchies and the new ecosystem of digital influence, where power and visibility are no longer dictated solely by titles or status, but by engagement, reach, and the ability to move audiences emotionally. It's also worth noting that Stassi's critique extends to Meghan's handling of public perception and narrative control. She alleges that Meghan pays attention to her critics while overlooking her most loyal supporters, interpreting this as a deliberate strategy to shape public opinion. This allegation, whether accurate or not, underscores a key point. Celebrity PR is a high-stakes game, and perceived favoritism can provoke intense emotional reactions from fans who feel invested and ignored. As we set the stage for the unfolding drama, we begin to see the contours of a larger story, one that involves loyalty, betrayal, PR strategy, and the volatile dynamics of modern fandom. Stassi's journey from reality star to Meghan Markle advocate, and now to outspoken critic, is emblematic of the emotional highs and lows inherent in these relationships. It's a story that resonates because it's not just about celebrities. It's about human emotion, expectation, and the consequences of being invested in someone else's world. But what came next would push this story from emotional tension to public spectacle. Stassi's words on her podcast were just the beginning. They signaled a shift, a transformation that would ripple across social media, provoke debates among fans, and ignite discussions about loyalty, entitlement, and the cost of devotion. The fallout from this turning point is what we explore next. The PR box snub that acted as the spark, igniting years of buried frustration into a public, explosive confrontation. What's in a box? To most people, a PR gift is just that, a shiny package with promotional items, a few treats, maybe a note of thanks. But to Stassi Schroeder, this particular PR box represented years of loyalty, admiration, and emotional investment in Meghan Markle. When the box never arrived, it wasn't merely a minor oversight. It felt like a personal betrayal, a public dismissal of someone who had spent years defending, promoting, and celebrating Meghan in both word and action. Let's set the scene. Meghan Markle, now a global figure with an enormous following, recently launched her, as ever, PR gifting campaign. Boxes were carefully curated and sent to celebrities, influencers, and media figures. Some of these recipients were critics or questioners, people who had publicly challenged Meghan's decisions or commented skeptically on her projects. And then there was Stassi. Her devotion had been visible, vocal, and relentless. She had defended Meghan on social media, created videos praising her, engaged with PR teams on Meghan's behalf, and broadcast her loyalty across multiple platforms. Yet, despite all that, her box was nowhere to be found. I have literally defended her when no one else did, Stassi said, recounting her frustration. I have filmed videos about it. I've commented on all the things. I literally had my King PR reach out. Think about that. She had gone above and beyond to champion Meghan, yet Meghan's team apparently chose to bypass her. For Stassi, it wasn't just a missed delivery. It was a signal, a message that her loyalty had gone unnoticed, unappreciated, or worse, taken for granted. To understand why this was so emotionally devastating, we have to consider the psychology of fandom. Fans invest emotionally in celebrities in ways that often exceed the rewards they receive. They defend them, promote them, and sometimes even reshape their own online identities to align with their admiration. When that investment is overlooked or disregarded, the feeling of betrayal can be intense, almost visceral. And for Stassi, it was compounded by a sense of hierarchy. She perceived herself as a loyal supporter who deserved recognition, and the lack of acknowledgement felt like an insult. There's another layer to this: social signaling. PR boxes are not just gifts, they're statements. They convey value, attention, and endorsement. By sending boxes to certain people and not to others, Meghan's team was making choices that communicated subtle hierarchies of importance. When Stassi saw people who had questioned Meghan receiving boxes, including the Oshry sisters, who had a complicated relationship with the Duchess, it reinforced her sense of being overlooked. When you're sending PR boxes to people who talk tea about you, Claudia and Jackie don't talk tea about her, but they've questioned her, and they also say, I wonder what Stassi's thinking about this. The message was clear. Stassi's devotion was acknowledged only indirectly, and it wasn't enough to warrant the same attention as the critics. The emotional fallout from this perceived snub was immediate and intense. Stassi described herself as furious, her anger fueled not just by disappointment, but by the sense of injustice. I am furious, and this is the last straw. I'm not watching her show anymore, she said, referring to Meghan's Netflix series. With love, Meghan. This wasn't just about a box. It was about feeling disrespected, devalued, and dismissed in a very public way. The stakes were personal and emotional, magnified by the visibility of both Stassi and Meghan in the media landscape. But what makes this situation particularly fascinating is the way Stassi frames the snub within a broader pattern of behavior. She suggests that Meghan is selective in her attention, favoring those who question her while overlooking those who support her. This observation points to a deeper tension in celebrity fan dynamics, the balance between managing criticism, rewarding loyalty, and controlling narrative. For fans like Stassi, who have invested heavily in defending Meghan, this perceived imbalance feels like a betrayal, even if it is strategically motivated. The PR box, then, becomes more than a package of promotional items. It's a symbol of recognition, a tangible representation of value, and a proxy for emotional validation. When it didn't arrive, the absence was deafening. Stassi's reaction, public, dramatic, and emotionally charged, reflects the significance of this gesture in the context of her long-standing support. It's a reminder that in the world of celebrity, even seemingly small acts carry immense symbolic weight. Stassi's anger was also amplified by the fact that she had already been publicly vocal in Meghan's defense. She had put herself on the line, created content, and engaged with the public on Meghan's behalf. The lack of reciprocation, the failure to acknowledge her efforts, felt like a personal slight. It wasn't just about the box itself. It was about being invisible in a landscape where visibility matters. As we examine the situation further, it becomes clear that this PR snub was the spark that ignited a much larger fire. It catalyzed Stassi's transformation from devoted fan to outspoken critic, and it set in motion a chain of events that would unfold publicly, drawing attention from fans, media outlets, and social media commentators alike. The story of a missing box is, at first glance, trivial. But in this case, it represents a tipping point, a moment where personal investment collided with perceived neglect, producing a highly charged emotional response. And yet, there's another layer to consider: the role of social media in amplifying these tensions. Stassi's reactions were not confined to private conversations or personal reflections. They were broadcast on her podcast, shared on social platforms, and dissected by fans and followers. The PR box, as a symbol of recognition and value, became a narrative device, a focal point for discussion about loyalty, hierarchy, and the emotional stakes of fandom. The story spread, evolving from a personal grievance into a public spectacle, with emotional resonance that extended far beyond the immediate participants. In many ways, the PR box episode exemplifies the intersection of personal emotion and public performance. Stassi's fury was real, rooted in years of investment and admiration. But it was also performative, amplified for an audience that consumes celebrity news voraciously, seeking drama, conflict, and human stories of betrayal and disillusionment. This duality, personal hurt expressed in a public forum, is a hallmark of modern celebrity culture, where social media, podcasts, and online commentary intersect to create multi-layered narratives with high emotional stakes. By the end of this chapter, it's clear that the PR box was not just a physical object. It was a symbol of recognition, a measure of loyalty, and a trigger for deep-seated emotional reactions. Stassi's reaction, furious, public, and unfiltered, sets the stage for a broader examination of fan dynamics, celebrity behavior, and the emotional complexities that arise when admiration meets neglect. But what came next would escalate the drama even further. Stassi didn't just stop at expressing anger over the box. She delved into Meghan's broader behavior, the choices she made in her PR campaigns, and the perceived favoritism toward critics. This next revelation would transform a story about a simple PR snub into a full-blown public confrontation, with social media buzzing, fans reacting, and Stassi's narrative taking center stage. The ripple effect was inevitable, and it would lead us directly into the next chapter, the tangled web of relationships, favoritism, and public perception that made this PR box not just a gift, but a spark for a feud that the world couldn't ignore. Why would someone send gifts to critics while leaving their most devoted supporters empty-handed? It's a question that cuts straight to the heart of Stassi Schroeder's fury, and it's one that reveals the complicated dynamics of celebrity, loyalty, and PR strategy. When Meghan Markle's, as ever, PR boxes went out, they didn't just arrive in random hands. They were carefully curated, strategically distributed, and, for Stassi, infuriatingly misaligned. Among the recipients were Claudia and Jackie Oshry, the sisters behind the Toast podcast, known for their thoughtful, often critical takes on cultural and celebrity topics. They had questioned Meghan's decisions in the past, not in an overtly hostile way, but enough to make them skeptics in Stassi's eyes. For Stassi, this was a bridge too far. She had invested years defending Meghan publicly, creating content, amplifying her projects, and acting as a vocal advocate in spaces where Meghan couldn't personally engage. And yet, despite this unwavering support, Meghan's team chose to send PR boxes to individuals who had, at best, a complicated relationship with the Duchess. When you're sending PR boxes to people who talk tea about you, Claudia and Jackie don't talk tea about her, but they've questioned her, and they also say, "I wonder what Stassi's thinking about this," Stassi explained on her podcast. The message could not have been clearer. The loyal fan is no longer the priority. Here's where the tension deepens. Stassi's reaction reveals a fundamental principle in human psychology: the expectation of reciprocity. We all, consciously or not, measure our investment in relationships by the response we receive. Stassi had given years of emotional energy to defending Meghan: videos, social media posts, podcast segments, and public commentary. She had gone beyond passive admiration. She had actively shaped conversations about Meghan in public spaces. And in return, she expected acknowledgement, validation that her support mattered, that it was seen, that it was valued. Instead, Meghan's team prioritized the Oshry sisters, sending them PR boxes despite their questioning tone. To Stassi, this wasn't just a PR misstep, it was an emotional slight. It signaled a hierarchy where critics were rewarded, while devoted fans were overlooked. In her words, "Everyone King knows. No longer." This statement is loaded. It's not just about a gift. It's about visibility, recognition, and emotional investment. Let's break this down further. The Oshry sisters occupy a unique position in the celebrity ecosystem. They aren't malicious critics. They are thoughtful commentators who analyze public figures with nuance. Their questioning of Meghan is not necessarily adversarial, but in the optics of fan loyalty, questioning can feel like betrayal, especially when juxtaposed against unwavering support from fans like Stassi. By sending boxes to the Oshrys and not Stassi, Meghan's team may have been attempting to engage with critics strategically, but the effect was to provoke fury from those who felt overlooked. Stassi's emotional response also highlights the often overlooked intensity of fandom in the digital age. Fans are no longer passive consumers. They are active participants. They comment, share, promote, and defend. Their labor, emotional, social, and sometimes even financial, is visible and measurable in likes, shares, and public commentary. When that labor is disregarded, it creates a cognitive dissonance. How can my unwavering devotion be ignored while those who question are rewarded? For Stassi, this dissonance manifested as anger, hurt, and a public declaration of disillusionment. The comparison between fan loyalty and perceived critical attention also brings to light a deeper social dynamic: the desire for exclusivity and acknowledgement. Fans like Stassi expect that their unwavering support will be noticed, and when it isn't, it feels like a personal failure on the part of the celebrity to honor the investment. It's not just about a box. It's about being seen, valued, and placed above those who are only partially engaged or even questioning. The PR box, in this case, becomes a symbol of relational hierarchy, a tangible marker of who matters most in the ecosystem of influence. Furthermore, this dynamic exposes the strategic complexity of celebrity PR. Meghan's team may have had calculated reasons for sending boxes to the Oshrys, perhaps to manage perception, engage with critics, or generate broader media coverage. But in doing so, they inadvertently alienated a loyal advocate, creating a ripple effect of outrage and public attention. Stassi's response underscores the delicate balance celebrities must maintain between managing their public image and honoring genuine fan devotion. Missteps in this balance can escalate quickly into full-blown public drama. Stassi's words also reveal an interesting meta-commentary on the nature of celebrity engagement. The Oshrys, by questioning Meghan and then acknowledging Stassi as a loyal fan, were participating in a subtle triangulation. The fan is seen, but only in relation to others who have been critical. This positioning intensifies Stassi's sense of exclusion, because her value is being measured against the scrutiny of others rather than recognized on its own merit. It's a classic example of how celebrity interactions can unintentionally weaponize loyalty, turning admiration into resentment when not carefully managed. The emotional intensity of this chapter is amplified by Stassi's own self-reflection. She admits to being a toxic fan, acknowledging the extremes of her devotion and the way it may have fueled unrealistic expectations. By framing herself as both invested and flawed, Stassi makes her anger relatable while also highlighting the psychological stakes of fan-celebrity relationships. Her transformation from loyal advocate to vocal critic illustrates how easily devotion can shift to disillusionment when expectations of acknowledgement are unmet. As the tension escalates, the audience is left wondering, what does this mean for Meghan Markle's relationship with her most devoted supporters? Can loyalty coexist with strategic engagement of critics, or are these two paths inevitably in conflict? Stassi's narrative forces us to confront the human cost of celebrity PR decisions, the fragility of fan devotion, and the volatile mix of admiration, expectation, and disappointment that defines modern fandom. But the story doesn't end with the PR box or the Oshry sisters. This moment of perceived betrayal sets the stage for even more explosive revelations. Stassi's anger is a catalyst, and the fallout touches on broader themes of control, social media strategy, and the psychology of celebrity influence. The next chapter will take us deeper into Meghan Markle's digital world, exploring her social media presence, her calculated public image, and how these elements contributed to the rift with one of her most vocal supporters. The stakes are high, the emotions raw, and the implications far-reaching. And just when it seems like the conflict revolves around PR boxes and social media posts, the deeper story of control, influence, and loyalty begins to emerge, a story that will shock, fascinate, and leave audiences questioning what really happens when admiration meets neglect. But what came next would escalate the drama in ways no one could have predicted, pulling fan psychology, celebrity strategy, and social media spectacle into a collision course that changed everything. How does a celebrity's social media presence shape the way fans feel, think, and react? For Meghan Markle, her digital footprint isn't just a marketing tool. It's a carefully curated world, a bubble of influence where perception is everything. And for Stassi Schroeder, navigating that bubble was both a passion and a battleground. Meghan's social media strategy is sophisticated, precise, and highly controlled. Every post, every story, every subtle interaction is designed to communicate her narrative to the world. From her charitable initiatives to her lifestyle imagery, the content is polished, aspirational, and, importantly, selective. It is not simply a personal diary. It is a narrative instrument, a way to project control, influence perception, and guide public conversation. For fans like Stassi, however, this curated world comes with emotional pitfalls. The bubble creates an environment where visibility equates to value. If a fan is recognized, mentioned, or even acknowledged through likes or comments, their devotion feels validated. Conversely, if their efforts go unnoticed, it can feel like a rejection, a dismissal of their investment. This is exactly what Stassi experienced. She said, "The way she moves through social media, I think that she's stuck in 2017, and she just thinks I'm a lowly reality person." Here, Stassi voices a perception shared by many digital-era superfans, that despite years of support, the celebrity sees them as unworthy of attention. This perception is intensified by Meghan's selective engagement. By interacting with critics, questioners, or less devoted followers while leaving her most loyal supporters unseen, Meghan's bubble becomes, in Stassi's eyes, exclusionary and controlling. It's also essential to recognize the mechanics of social media in this conflict. Platforms like Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok amplify visibility. Every like, comment, and share is a metric of influence, not just for the celebrity, but for the fan. Fans invest emotionally in these interactions because they provide measurable acknowledgement. Stassi's fury, therefore, isn't just about perceived snubs. It's about being invisible in a space where attention is the currency of value. Moreover, Meghan's selective engagement signals hierarchy within her audience. By liking or acknowledging certain posts, she elevates some voices while sidelining others. Stassi interpreted this as a deliberate choice to favor those who questioned her rather than those who defended her relentlessly. I think it's her way of trying to control the narrative. I think she's controlling, Stassi stated. Her words reveal a deep frustration with the power dynamics inherent in social media, where the celebrity can reward, ignore, or manipulate fans at will. The intensity of Stassi's response is also a reflection of how the bubble magnifies emotions. Social media is immediate, public, and inescapable. When fans see others receiving attention or acknowledgement, while their own devotion goes unnoticed, the sense of betrayal is heightened. In this digital ecosystem, perceived favoritism isn't abstract. It's visible, quantifiable, and emotionally charged. But there's another layer here. Meghan's social media bubble isn't just about her visibility, it's about narrative control. By interacting selectively, she guides the story, shaping public perception and influencing which voices are amplified. To a devoted fan like Stassi, this control can feel manipulative. Paying attention to her haters instead of her fans is not merely a critique. It's a profound emotional indictment, suggesting that the celebrity prioritizes image management over genuine fan relationships. Stassi's experience also underscores the psychological complexity of online devotion. She admits to being a toxic fan and later a toxic hater, highlighting the thin line between admiration and resentment in social media-driven relationships. Fans invest so much of themselves emotionally that perceived neglect can trigger intense reactions. The digital bubble magnifies these feelings, creating a pressure cooker of expectation, frustration, and, ultimately, confrontation. This chapter also reveals a broader truth about celebrity culture in the social media era. Influence is no longer solely about talent, titles, or traditional media exposure. It's about perception, visibility, and the curated interactions within digital spaces. Fans are participants in this ecosystem, and their emotions are entangled with the celebrity's choices. When those choices seem exclusionary, the fallout is both personal and public. Stassi's critique extends beyond mere exclusion. It's about the ethics and optics of attention. By rewarding questioners and skeptics over loyal advocates, Meghan's team inadvertently created a narrative of favoritism and control. The social media bubble, once a space of admiration, becomes a site of tension, resentment, and eventual fallout. In many ways, this chapter exposes the invisible pressures of digital devotion. Fans like Stassi operate inside a bubble that mirrors the celebrity's own, full of expectations, emotional investments, and a constant awareness of visibility. When those expectations aren't met, the emotional consequences are magnified by the public nature of the platform. And just when it seemed the conflict was contained to missed boxes and social media oversight, Stassi escalated the story. She began to publicly declare her withdrawal, unfollowing Meghan, turning off her fan identity, and embracing her anger. "I'm not going to talk about her anymore. I'm going to unfollow her right now. Done," she declared. This act was both symbolic and practical. A fan reclaiming autonomy in a space where devotion had been exploited, or at least unacknowledged. The social media bubble had done more than highlight a perceived snub. It had amplified emotions, created measurable stakes, and forced a public confrontation. Stassi's move from fan to critic demonstrates how digital platforms transform personal grievances into viral drama, where emotional investment, visibility, and perceived neglect intersect in a perfect storm. But the story doesn't stop at social media. The next revelation would take the conflict deeper, exposing issues of control, manipulation, and strategic attention. Stassi's fury over Meghan's digital decisions was only the beginning. What followed would show just how far the tension between loyalty and neglect could escalate, and how the world would watch every moment unfold. What happened next would turn a fan feud into a public spectacle, and no one could predict the consequences. When does admiration cross the line into obsession, and when does loyalty clash with authority? For Stassi Schroeder, the answer came sharply into focus as she began to interpret Meghan Markle's behavior not just as selective, but as controlling. Her allegations of Meghan being a control freak weren't made lightly. They were the culmination of years of observation, emotional investment, and an intense personal reaction to being overlooked. The phrase control freak is loaded. It suggests a person who micromanages, manipulates outcomes, and dictates the behavior of those around them. In the context of celebrity fandom, Such a label carries explosive implications. Fans, by definition, are participants in a controlled narrative. They support, amplify, and validate. When the celebrity appears to manipulate or dismiss those fans, the emotional backlash can be immediate and intense. For Stassi, this dynamic was impossible to ignore. Her anger and disappointment were not merely about PR boxes or social media engagement. They reflected a broader perception that Meghan sought to shape interactions in ways that prioritized image over genuine relationships. "I think it's her way of trying to control the narrative. I think she's controlling," Stassi said. This statement goes beyond personal grievance. It touches on the broader strategy of influence, where appearances, acknowledgments, and audience perception are tightly managed. Stassi's argument extends to Meghan's decision-making regarding who receives attention, gifts, or recognition. By rewarding critics like Claudia and Jackie Oshry while overlooking her most loyal supporters, Meghan's actions, in Stassi's eyes, illustrate a deliberate exertion of control. It's not just favoritism, it's a calculated shaping of public perception. For a fan who has invested emotionally and publicly, this feels like a violation of trust, an undermining of the very loyalty that should be celebrated. The allegations also hint at a tension between Meghan's digital and public personas. Social media is a controlled environment, but public appearances, interviews, and projects like With Love, Meghan extend that control into broader domains. Stassi interpreted these choices as strategic exercises in narrative management, but for her, they had real emotional consequences. The perceived slight of exclusion wasn't just a momentary oversight. It was a deliberate demonstration of who mattered in Meghan's world. Interestingly, Stassi compared Meghan to Blake Lively, although she didn't fully clarify the comparison. The parallel suggests a perception that both women exert significant control over their public narratives and personal brands, dictating who gets access, acknowledgement, and visibility. For Stassi, this reinforced the sense that Meghan's behavior was not simply oversight or casual preference. It was part of a calculated pattern of control. The emotional stakes for Stassi are heightened by the intersection of fandom and self-identity. As someone who has built a personal brand around influence, visibility, and loyalty, being dismissed by Meghan was not just disappointing, it was destabilizing. Her devotion, once a source of pride, became a source of frustration and anger. "My feelings are hurt, and I'm a toxic fan. I was a toxic fan that's now a toxic hater," she admitted. This self-awareness adds depth to her allegations, framing them as both personal grievances and observations about broader celebrity behavior. Stassi's critique also underscores the modern reality of celebrity control in the age of social media. Unlike traditional celebrities, today's public figures operate in a constant feedback loop, where fan reactions are instantaneous and public. The ability to engage selectively, to reward some and overlook others, is a powerful tool, but it carries risks. Missteps can provoke intense backlash, especially from fans who perceive themselves as integral to the celebrity's narrative. Moreover, the concept of control in celebrity fan dynamics is inherently complex. Fans voluntarily submit to influence. They amplify messaging, defend actions, and shape conversations. When that submission is met with apparent disregard, it feels not just ungrateful, but manipulative. Stassi's framing of Meghan as controlling taps into this tension, highlighting how management of perception can easily intersect with personal feelings of exclusion, betrayal, and anger. The fallout from these allegations is amplified by Stassi's public platform. Unlike private fans, her words reach thousands of listeners and viewers, who then interpret, amplify, and engage with her perspective. What might have been a private grievance becomes a public spectacle, transforming the narrative into one of conflict, betrayal, and psychological tension. The allegations of control are no longer just personal. They become part of a broader conversation about celebrity behavior, loyalty, and the delicate balance between influence and recognition. Stassi's anger also intersects with narrative expectation. Fans expect access, acknowledgement, and recognition in proportion to their devotion. When those expectations are unmet, the sense of injustice can be profound. The perceived control exerted by Meghan, whether intentional or not, creates a situation where loyalty feels manipulated rather than honored. Stassi's vocal critique captures the emotional intensity of that perceived imbalance. And yet, even as Stassi calls out Meghan, there's a subtle acknowledgement of her own role in this drama. By recognizing herself as a toxic fan turned toxic hater, she frames the conflict as a complex interplay between personal investment, emotional expectation, and public narrative. It's not simply about Meghan's control. It's about the high stakes of emotional investment in a world where recognition is selective and visibility is a currency of power. As this chapter closes, the tension escalates. Stassi's accusations of control are not abstract. They have real implications for how fans interpret, respond to, and engage with celebrities in the social media era. The perceived manipulation transforms admiration into anger, loyalty into disillusionment, and private frustration into public spectacle. But what came next would amplify this confrontation to an even more dramatic level. Stassi's fury, now intertwined with allegations of control, would soon intersect with public perception, media coverage, and social media discourse, creating a perfect storm that no one could ignore. The next chapter reveals how the feud deepened, how accusations of favoritism and manipulation collided, and how the narrative expanded beyond a single fan's anger into a cultural phenomenon that captivated audiences everywhere. What happens when unwavering devotion turns into outright resentment? For Stassi Schroeder, the answer became starkly clear in the aftermath of Meghan Markle's perceived PR slights, selective attention, and controlling behavior. The transformation from loyal advocate to vocal critic wasn't sudden. It was a slow burn fueled by emotional investment, disappointment, and the public visibility of her frustration. Stassi's declaration was deliberate, public, and raw. "My feelings are hurt, and I'm a toxic fan. I was a toxic fan that's now a toxic hater," she admitted. It's a phrase that captures a complex emotional evolution. To unpack it, we have to examine both the psychology of fan behavior and the structural mechanics of public confrontation in the digital age. Fans are, by nature, emotionally invested. They celebrate achievements, defend against criticism, and engage with every aspect of a celebrity's public persona. When those fans are overlooked, dismissed, or ignored, the emotional repercussions can be intense. Stassi had spent years defending Meghan on social media, creating content, and engaging with PR teams, all acts of advocacy that demanded effort, time, and emotional energy. The lack of acknowledgement, therefore, became a trigger for frustration and anger. But why toxic? Stassi herself recognizes the extremity of her prior behavior. She had crossed the boundary from enthusiastic support into behavior that could be seen as possessive or obsessive. In fandom psychology, this isn't uncommon. Fans who identify closely with a celebrity often experience their successes and failures as personal victories or losses. When loyalty is unreciprocated, resentment can develop, and admiration can flip into critique or hatred. Stassi's acknowledgement of her toxicity is an unusually candid admission in a culture that often glorifies relentless fandom. The transition from toxic fan to toxic hater also illustrates the role of public declaration in emotional processing. By speaking openly on her podcast, Stassi externalized her feelings, moving them from internal frustration into the public sphere. This act serves multiple functions. It provides catharsis, communicates grievances directly to both Meghan and the audience, and reframes her narrative from one of blind devotion to one of conscious critique. Importantly, this public declaration is a strategic performance. Stassi isn't merely venting, she's shaping perception. By framing herself as a former advocate now disillusioned, she positions her critique as credible and informed. Her words carry weight because they come from someone who once defended Meghan passionately. This is a narrative tactic often overlooked in fan-celebrity conflicts. The transformation from support to criticism amplifies authority because it signals insider knowledge, experience, and emotional authenticity. Stassi's public declaration also underscores the emotional stakes inherent in celebrity-fan interactions. Fans invest not just attention, but identity, energy, and emotional labor. When that investment is perceived as unacknowledged, it creates a sense of injustice that is amplified in public forums like podcasts, social media, and video content. The result is a feedback loop of emotion, performance, and audience engagement, where every statement, reaction, and comment reinforces the narrative of perceived betrayal. Moreover, the term toxic hater is powerful because it acknowledges responsibility while maintaining emotional authenticity. Stassi isn't merely blaming Meghan. She's reflecting on her own transformation, admitting that her passion has shifted into frustration and anger. This duality creates a compelling narrative. It's both a critique of Meghan's behavior and a self-aware examination of the psychological consequences of extreme fandom. The impact of this declaration is magnified by the public nature of the feud. Fans, followers, and media outlets all witness Stassi's evolution from champion to critic. Every statement, tweet, or podcast episode became evidence of the transformation, fueling discussions about loyalty, fairness, and the emotional toll of celebrity culture. Social media, with its immediacy and visibility, turned a private grievance into a cultural conversation, amplifying both Stassi's voice and the scrutiny of Meghan's behavior. But there's another layer, the element of symbolic closure. By unfollowing Meghan and publicly cutting ties, Stassi performed a ritual of disengagement. It's a symbolic act, signaling to both the celebrity and the audience that her loyalty had reached its limit. "I'm not going to talk about her anymore. I'm going to unfollow her right now." "Done," she said. This act transforms emotional frustration into a tangible gesture, a declaration of independence from the bubble of admiration that had previously defined her interactions with Meghan. This chapter also illuminates the broader dynamics of fandom in the digital era. Fans are participants in a structured ecosystem, where visibility, recognition, and acknowledgement are constantly mediated by social media algorithms, celebrity engagement, and public perception. When those mechanisms fail to reward loyalty, intense reactions are often inevitable. Stassi's transformation from toxic fan to toxic hater is a case study in the emotional consequences of unreciprocated devotion in an environment where attention is both currency and validation. The declaration of hate, however, is not simply a conclusion. It's a pivot point. It signals a shift in narrative tone, from defense to critique, from admiration to judgment. For audiences, it reframes the story. The conflict is no longer about PR boxes or social media oversight. It's about emotional betrayal, perceived control, and the consequences of selective engagement. As this chapter closes, the stakes have never been higher. Stassi's public declaration sets the stage for escalating tension, media scrutiny, and broader cultural discussion. Her words are not merely personal. They are a lens through which we examine loyalty, influence, and the emotional cost of fame. But what came next would elevate the drama even further. The toxic fan-turned-hater narrative was only the beginning. Soon, Stassi's critique would intersect with broader allegations about control, favoritism, and the intricate power dynamics of Meghan Markle's world, transforming a personal grievance into a story that captivated fans and critics alike. What does it take for a devoted fan to completely abandon a celebrity's latest project? For Stassi Schroeder, the answer lies in a mixture of betrayal, selective recognition, and the emotional weight of loyalty unreciprocated. When Meghan Markle's Netflix series, With Love, Meghan, premiered, it should have been a moment of excitement, a time to celebrate her success. Instead, for Stassi, it became the tipping point, the final straw that crystallized her transition from loyal advocate to vocal critic. "I'm not watching her show anymore," Stassi declared. Those 6 words carry the weight of years of investment. She had defended Meghan through controversies, amplified her projects across social platforms, and publicly celebrated her milestones. To walk away from the Netflix series wasn't a casual decision. It was a symbolic severing of emotional ties, a rejection of the content and the creator herself. Let's consider the emotional context. With Love, Meghan wasn't just another show. For fans, it represented Meghan's creative vision, her personal narrative, and her public persona all woven together into a product designed for mass consumption. Loyal fans often invest emotionally in these projects, treating them as extensions of the celebrity's identity. By refusing to watch, Stassi was signaling not only her anger, but also her withdrawal of emotional investment, a public declaration of disillusionment. The decision to stop watching the series is intertwined with the broader sense of being overlooked. Stassi had already been snubbed by Meghan's PR efforts. missed boxes, selective acknowledgement, and perceived favoritism toward critics. These incidents accumulated, each one a small but significant blow to her loyalty. When the Netflix series arrived, it represented both an opportunity for engagement and a reminder of exclusion. Watching the show under these circumstances would have felt like complicity in her own marginalization. Stassi's reaction also highlights the psychology of fan entitlement. Fans who invest heavily in a celebrity's career often develop expectations of reciprocity. They anticipate recognition, acknowledgement, and sometimes even a sense of exclusivity. When these expectations are unmet, the emotional response can be severe. In Stassi's case, the Netflix series became a symbol of the imbalance between devotion and acknowledgement. By walking away, she reclaimed agency, asserting that her loyalty could not be taken for granted. But there's more at play than personal grievance. The decision not to watch the show is also a critique of Meghan's perceived management of her fan base. Stassi described Meghan as controlling and focused on her critics rather than her supporters. The Netflix series, in this light, became emblematic of a broader strategy in which fans' devotion is measured, categorized, and, in some cases, devalued. Walking away was a way of rejecting that strategy and making a public statement about P. The act of disengagement is symbolic in multiple ways. Social media amplifies visibility, and fans' choices, whether to watch, like, or comment, carry public meaning. By refusing to watch the series, Stassi signaled to her audience, her peers, and Meghan herself that loyalty has limits. It's a public declaration that admiration is conditional, that devotion is not limitless, and that perceived betrayal has consequences. There's also a performative element to consider. Stassi's declaration is not only an expression of personal emotion, but also a narrative device. In the age of podcasts, social media, and influencer-driven content, public statements like these become newsworthy, generating discussion, engagement, and further amplification of the story. Her decision to abandon the series is both personal catharsis and public spectacle, a dual act that underscores the intensity of modern fandom. Additionally, the Netflix series incident illustrates a psychological phenomenon known as fan burnout. Fans who overinvest emotionally can reach a tipping point where admiration transforms into frustration or anger. Each perceived slight, missed PR boxes, selective social media engagement, and lack of acknowledgement adds weight, culminating in a decisive act of disengagement. For Stassi, with love, Meghan was that tipping point, the moment when accumulated disappointment became too heavy to bear. Stassi's refusal to engage with the series also raises questions about the responsibility of celebrities toward their most devoted fans. While critics may be strategically engaged to manage perception or generate media attention, loyal supporters often form the backbone of public acclaim. Ignoring or devaluing them can backfire, creating public narratives of betrayal, anger, and disillusionment. Stassi's reaction is a case study in how neglecting loyal fans can transform advocacy into public critique. The ripple effects are immediate. Fans and followers began discussing her decision, analyzing motivations, and debating the validity of her grievances. Media outlets amplified her statements, turning a personal decision into a broader cultural story. The abandonment of the Netflix series became a symbol of loyalty lost, trust broken, and the emotional stakes of celebrity fandom in the digital era. This chapter also underscores the tension between personal identity and public devotion. For Stassi, her advocacy for Meghan had become intertwined with her sense of self. Walking away from the series wasn't just a critique of the content. It was a reclamation of personal agency, a way to assert autonomy in a space where she had felt overlooked and undervalued. The act of disengagement transforms private emotion into public statement, illustrating the power dynamics inherent in modern fan-celebrity relationships. And yet, the story was far from over. Stassi's withdrawal from the Netflix series signaled a broader escalation, one that would expose even deeper layers of tension, favoritism, and emotional fallout. The drama surrounding PR boxes, social media, and control had set the stage, but the abandonment of With Love, Meghan would ignite a new wave of scrutiny, reaction, and public commentary. What happened next would take the conflict beyond a single fan's disappointment and into a full-blown cultural conversation about loyalty, recognition, and the high emotional stakes of celebrity engagement. The fallout from this decision would challenge perceptions, test allegiances, and set the scene for a confrontation that no one could ignore. How far does a single fan's anger travel once it enters the public sphere? In the case of Stassi Schroeder and Meghan Markle, the answer is staggering. What began as a personal grievance over PR boxes and perceived snubs quickly escalated into a full-blown public spectacle, amplified by social media, podcasts, and traditional media outlets. This chapter examines the cascading effects of Stassi's public declaration, the fan reactions that followed, and the media frenzy that transformed a private conflict into a cultural phenomenon. Stassi's statements, posted on her podcast and circulated through social media, immediately captured attention. Fans reacted with shock, support, and criticism, creating an intricate web of discourse that extended far beyond the original grievance. Comments flooded Instagram, Twitter, and Reddit, dissecting every word, gesture, and implication. The intensity of the reactions illustrates the viral power of emotional authenticity. When a public figure expresses unfiltered emotion, audiences respond with heightened engagement. Supporters of Stassi applauded her candor, praising her for calling out perceived injustices and refusing to stay silent. These fans echoed her sentiments, sharing their own frustrations with Meghan's selective engagement, social media strategies, and PR priorities. The narrative quickly evolved from a single-person grievance to a collective critique, with other fans sharing similar experiences of feeling overlooked, undervalued, or dismissed. At the same time, critics accused Stassi of overreacting, labeling her statements as attention-seeking or excessively dramatic. Some argued that celebrities have no obligation to reward every fan equally, and that disappointment is an inevitable part of fandom. Others questioned her motives, suggesting that framing herself as a toxic fan turned toxic hater was a calculated move to generate buzz and maintain relevance. These contrasting viewpoints created a polarized